can run.
Alrighty, we are back. This is a recorded segment. At the last minute, I had to run out of town, and so I had to juggle things around, and I want to thank my next guest, Brian David Anderson, for adjusting his schedule to be able to come on and talk. And what we're going to be talking about is distilled water. Now, I mentioned a few weeks ago that I have a process that I do. I get distilled water in those milk jugs. I pour it into my Berkey filter. I happen to have the Dalton filter elements. After that, I pour it into a stainless steel container, and I let it sit for 24 hours to, quote, outgas, unquote. And I have my little Vortex unit that I stick underneath it. It's a little piece of metal that's been treated by Brian in his Vortex process, which then structures the water. Now, I mentioned this on the air, and a listener wrote in and sent information about how distilled water is about the worst water for you. I mean, other than, of course, polluted or poisoned water, but that the body actually loses minerals, etc., in the process of processing the distilled water. But that's true. It's a true statement. But the issue here is not distilled water, but if it's structured water. And what happens, the rain is distilled water. It evaporates from the ground, goes up in the air, and then falls down through the sky. Now, it also picks up some pollution along the way, but that's another issue. And when the rain comes through the sky, it becomes structured. Some have theorized many methods for this. One, I recall, where the magnetic field, the water swirls down in swirls as it rains. I've seen this happen sometimes where you can actually see the swirls. Swirls down through the magnetic field and gets its structuring in an environment, and so on. And there are many gizmos that talk about structuring water. And so I thought it would be a good idea, since I'm using this process, that I asked Brian to come on to explain very detailed about the distilled water and why it's not the distilled water in as much as the non-structured water that causes the trouble. And so TryVortex.com is the main website for his products. And welcome back to the show, Brian.
Oh, thank you. Very good to be back.
Yeah, so I tell you what I used to do is my first introduction to structured water was to Penta. I even had the inventor on to talk about it. And what I found was fascinating was that the water absorbed really fast in my mouth and tasted good, and I flushed a lot of staining water out of my body, and it was just a good experience. However, it wasn't a good experience buying it. It was about almost $3 a liter. And after talking to you one time, unrelated, I think it was about the Kennedy assassination, whenever you mentioned these things, and I put together this process. I tried it out, just like I mentioned, and as far as I can see, it's as good, and it's perhaps better on a micro scale than the Penta. Of course, it's a way less expensive. And I found myself, when I drink it, it tastes good. It's kind of creamy, I guess the word would be. It absorbs properly, and it's distilled water. And so I'd like you to go through about the distilled water, why it's bad, what has to be done about it, what's good about it, as opposed to spring water, and etc.
Well, again, the whole controversy is that one camp says that the distilled water will absorb nutrients from your body, and the other camp says, well, so what, or it really doesn't matter. And what I discovered over now, going on 20 years of research, is that when people say that distilled water is very good for you, they're half right. And when people say that the distilled water is bad for you, they're half wrong. As you just now mentioned, the whole key factor, especially in distilled water, is how it is structured. A chaotic type of molecular structure, which regretfully that what occurs when a distiller makes the water. It uses a high heat, and there is not enough time then in that high heat for the water to be spiraled in the correct manner so a molecular structure can take place. So that by the time it drips out of the distiller, you have a very chaotic type of water. You can simply prove this to yourself if you if you get distilled water either out of a bottle or if you have a distiller. is to take a couple of drops and drop it on your car hood. What you'll notice is the drops on the car hood will bead up. They come into little bitty beads of water. That means the water cannot adhere to itself. It breaks apart because the molecular structure is chaotic. Then once it comes in contact with a hard surface, it just breaks apart. And then when you have a raindrop coming from the cloud and it drops on the car hood, it spreads out. Does not bead up. It just spreads out and keeps its molecular structure. And that's what you want. That's a really good, good test of how and the meaning of distilled water is one has molecular structure and holds itself together, and the other does, and the other does not. So,
well, let me stop there and go back to what do you mean by chaotic structure?
Literally, the best way I can try to explain what molecular structure, if you can imagine at the molecular level, just imagine there be a pool table. And if you took all the balls and then you hit it with the ball, all the balls then scattered all over the table. And now you want to move all of the balls in some sort of manner, but with them all scattered all over the table, it's almost impossible to do that. What the Tri-Vortex does, and also what the spiraling in the magnetic fields of the sky, what it does then is to take all of those balls and put them in the rack of the pool rack, and then now all those balls can move very anywhere. You can put them on the floor, you can put them anywhere they can move. So that has some sort of structure. So that's the best way that I know of try to explain it in layman's terms, is that your particles that are inside the molecule are just total chaos. They're moving in different types of ways. They're not coherent. They're not moving together. And that's what you want, is to have the molecular structure coherent, where all light particles are moving in the same direction at the same time. So if that
so you would have the actual water molecule itself in a structured environment is connected to one another to form some type of a structure. I'm trying not to use the word structure, but I can't think of any other way to put it. Mm-hmm. Whereas in a distilled chaotic environment, the water molecules are acting on their own accord. I guess it'd be like a school of fish versus just chaotic fish darting around.
Yeah, that's true. And basically also, too, is if you had wood and you just splintered it all up and you splintered the wood. Now that's, again, a very much chaotic structure. Compare that now to a honeycomb. And now which one's going to have more strength? Which one's going to have a much more purpose, coherency? The honeycomb or the wood that's just totally splintered?
And so if you drink stream water, for example, provided it's pure, you're looking at a collection of this structured water, but in our environment with the pollution and whatnot, we just no longer can trust stream or lake or even artesian water for that matter.
To a certain degree, yeah, that you're still going to have some sort of contamination is going to occur once it gets onto the ground. And but again, as you said before, is that the whole Earth is nurtured by rain clouds that are distilled. Now that distilled water is falling directly on the leaves. Now once it gets into the ground, there's going to be a little bit of structure that's going to be lost and a little bit of contamination, but not the structure. That's the key thing. Also, in my book on the website, it's at trivortex.com. The title of the book is called Superhydrate and Charge Your Cells. It's a PDF. It's free and takes about 45 minutes to read. I try to put it in as much layman's terms as possible. And we're also talking about, well, what about the negativity of water? Well, what about something that's very positive? And I discovered that several years ago. I did a trip to the Big Island in Hawaii. I knew nothing about the island whatsoever. I did not know its history. I knew it was volcanoes, but as far as the peoples, everything, I just sort of went in kind of per se the babe in the island or the babe in the woods. And then there was arrangement to go do a tour of a lava cave. And so basically what these lava caves, they would build up, they would be a volcano would blow up, and then it would create pathways inside the lava itself, and that was the caves. And some of them went pretty deep, and you had to put on equipment and helmets and long pants and pads and everything to go through these lava caves. And we were then now standing in the down in the lava cave, and we looked down, and there was a wooden sort of jug type of thing, and they were explaining that the local tribe in the southern part of the Big Island, they were the only tribe to then go make the arduous task. What they would do is they would go down into these caves. Now, the lava caves and the lava was porous. So as the rains came in, the water would then go through all of this lava. Mm-hmm. And the lava is made up mostly of iron oxides, of magnetite, hematite, and other types of things. And that's what magnetite is iron, but it also has some very key oxygen molecules that are attached to the iron. And so they're always constantly giving off this structured type of vibration. Now you also, when the earth started, or when that lava started building up, it also put pressure. So as the pressure was put onto this lava and onto the magnetite, it was even further where it was also emitting off a lot of these frequencies, fields, light particles, that type of thing. So then the water would creep down through all the crevices of the lava and drop into these caves. And you'd look up and you could see also where there would be actual branches. I mean, here we were a good 200 feet underneath the surface, and here were these little limbs coming down. And basically, as then the lava would blow up, the water came in, there was a seeding, and then some places then that's where literally the roots of the trees were coming all the way down that far, and the plants. So I'm standing there, and now I've already had an experience with iron oxides. There was a product called the Chi lamp. It's still sold here. It's a mineral type of lamp, and its history goes back to China, in that there was a company that was smelting iron oxides, magnetite, hematite, those types of things. And of course, now when they're smelting, they're creating heat. Instead of what the lava caves were doing by creating pressure, they were doing with heat. And what they noticed is the workers had all sorts of energy. I mean, and there was hardly any illness. There was great morale, everything. But then if the worker or some of the management teams would be away from the smelting area for, say, like a week, 10 days, they noticed that their energy levels just dropped off significantly. So then their logical deduction was, well, okay, they took some of these iron oxides, the same thing that was inside of now these lava caves in Hawaii, and they started then to put them on a plate, on a metal plate, and then they would put a heating element, a heating coil behind that. And so they heated up the plate, and that basically duplicated what the smelting process was doing. And so that then came to you call it, I don't know why the name infrared ever came up, but it's also called the Chi lamp, the infrared lamp. You go look that up. And so it's been sold now for a good 25 years here in the United States and all around the world. So now I have this experience with this lamp. Okay, and now when I was talking with the guide, they were saying, I said, well, what's the major component of the lava? And they said, well, there's a lot of magnetite in it. And so, the light went off. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, if there was only one tribe drinking this water, I said, this tribe had tremendous amount of energy. They had a tremendous amount of motivation. They were probably smarter. They were faster. They had all these characteristics and especially over generations, if there was like several generations, even 10, 12 generations where they're drinking this water and they're reproducing underneath this water, I said this tribe probably was the leaders. And this woman then looked at me and she said, my gosh, you've just now solved possibly a major mystery here. And all of your leaders from the Hawaiian Islands all come from this one small tribe. When the white man came to Hawaii, all of the hierarchy came from the southern part of the island, and they were the ones that drank this water. And so then when the white man showed up and there was more, then the water stopped being collected, and that whole then lineage of line stopped drinking that water. And hence, it's probably also, if any one thing that also led to the downfall was that the family stopped drinking, and that particular family and region stopped drinking that really good water. So here we have a really classic example of how good water impacts a whole society, not only just an individual, but an entire society. And its political leadership, its social sciences, everything. So if it's working on a larger scale there of structured water, just think of what's going to happen in your own individual type of life.
Now, what about, there's been talk about tribes who live in the Himalayas drinking glacier water. Is it possible that the glacier action itself, pressure and going across, perhaps the magnet mountains and whatnot, structured the water?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Again, how much of those rocks being magnetite and crystals and that type of thing, and they're doing all the swirling type of motion and in a really fast, rapid type of movement. Yes, so that's basically here you had the magnetite now being put under pressure by the volcanoes. Here it was heat by the Chinese, and now just swift movement of the water over it. One of the things that I did then, when I was working with this Qi lamp, I then said, wait a minute, what if instead of I didn't do heat or do pressure, but what about if you took some of these iron oxides and a couple other, I came up with kind of an ingredient type of package. And what I first did is I put a Tesla coil, a high voltage Tesla coil through there. And on one end was the Tesla coil, then the powder would come through, and then there was a wire on the other side of it. And so what I noticed then is that when I started doing that and I connected that other wire to a plate that was connected to the iron oxides, then I put my drinks on it. In about 7-9 minutes, it would start doing all this structuring. So the high voltage was acting as a carrier. Just instead of doing the heat and the pressure, I was doing high voltages. But then it was like, high voltage was a real kind of like cumbersome type of thing to do to come out with some sort of product, which I did do. In fact, I have one at my foot here. It's what was called multitrans, and it was a high voltage Tesla coil. And I had to do a whole special type of thing, and I put the magnetite or my powder on that and connected it up, and it was very cumbersome. But then I found out that the Tesla coils also put out just an electromagnetic frequency or a sound frequency. So I got a frequency generator. Instead of putting the high voltage through there, I put a frequency through. And I found out actually it even worked better than the high voltage. It worked better than the plate, or it worked better than the heat, and it worked better than pressure. It was actually if you were going to maximize the use of these iron oxides, was when you put a sound signal, and had to be a series of sound signals through it. Then on the other side of where you're putting it through, you put another wire, and that connects to a plate. What was interesting, though, is when you try to do any type of measurements beyond the powder to that wire that was connected, there was no signal. There was nothing. You could not measure anything. There was no standard measurements at all. But when you plugged it in, and then you put some wine, juice, whatever, connected to that, within 7-9 minutes, it was the structure was changed. So that was, again, the phase 2 of multitrans. And I sold those as a small little packet unit. You can go up on the website, tryvortex.com, and you can see some pictures of that. It's a little white thing that I did. In fact, my cousin and I sold those under the name of multitrans. Then they were bought out by a company called Sea Silver. And sea silver was using various types of seaweeds in their drink, and the seaweeds in the drink absolutely tasted awful. It was gross. But once it had the multitrans treatment to it, the taste really, really, really mellowed out. And so then the owner of that company offered to buy me out. I did it. It was it was a mistake, yet it was also a necessary mistake because I had two different contracts. I had one for my multitrans and one for research. Well, as soon as he got me signed on to the multitrans, he never followed through with the research contract. So basically what I had to do was walk away from my multitrans. I could no longer sell it. So that forced me then to get away from totally all electronics and then go into what's really truly now the area of subtle energy. And so that's when I then discovered, it was in the laboratory of Cleve Baxter. He had a chemistry book that was left by somebody in his lab 5 years prior that came in and did some experiments. And this chemistry book was dated in 1901. It was for doctors, dentists, and nurses. And inside of this chemistry book, I discovered the table of the chemical elements was put on a spiral with 20 radial lines, and each place where the line and the spiral intersected, they put a chemical element. You also, again, can go up on tryvortex.com. I have a copy of that original spiral, and then as far as I know, I am the very first person then to finish off that spiral. And when I finished it off, then I was now, everything was harmonics. I was convinced of that. Then I also put the table of elements on a sphere and turned everything into geometry. One of the things also was that I was into the research of Annie Besson and Charles Leadbeater. They did remote viewing of the chemical elements. And what they noticed is that there was actually 96 chemical elements. Traditional science says there's 92. And so what I did is I took the table of the chemical elements and I put them, if people are familiar, on the table of chemical elements, there is what's called the lanthanide group, and it's separated from the table. Well, what I did is I put them back into the table where they should be, all together. When you do that, they had remote viewed 4 extra elements. Well, exactly where these blank holes were, that's where these chemical elements that they had seen. So that told me 96 is the thing. When you take 96 and you divide it into a sphere of 360 degrees, you end up with 3.75. Also, what's key about this, when you're doing the value of pi and come up with that 3.14 number, they actually, what they do is they break down the circle into parts, and to get the basic value of pi, they use a 96-sided polygon. So here we have math also supporting that these 4 extra elements are probably there. I think that they're again buried. They're probably out on the outer planets. So I just went from the contention that, yes, there was 96 chemical elements. But now I was looking for that there has to be a basic geometry shape to work on these 96. There's probably one basic geometric form, and then there's 96 variations of it. And that form came to me, as far as what I'm concerned, is the true form, is from the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The Great Pyramid is the only pyramid of all the pyramids in Egypt that have the walls slightly indented. There was researchers by the name of Bill Schul and Ed Pettit. They did some laser studies. They took just a flat-sided pyramid, and they put front-sided mirrors on the walls, and they did a laser beam into the mirror, and they just followed the refraction all the way around where it reflect to. So it looks like we're going to a commercial.
No, yeah, you still probably got about 30 seconds if you want to wind it up.
So just again, what they then found out is that when they start the flat-sided wall the beam went nowhere. When they started indenting the walls in, the beam went directly into the King's Chamber area. The Cheops pyramid is a prism. And we'll get on the other side of this, we'll get more into that prism and how it affects structured water.
All right, well, see, this is a fascinating journey as we're going to. You thought you were just going to hear about distilled water, but you see, as you go down the rabbit hole, it spreads out to this secret knowledge that has been rediscovered during this time. So hold on, we'll be back with Brian right after this. All right, we are back with Brian David Anderson. We're talking distilled water, actually distilled water and structured water. And he's been taking us through the history of his finding out about the principles of the structure and how items on the earth and the structure, the chemical, the biochemical effects as far as having the structured water. We'll get into that. But right now we've been talking about the structuring process that has been rediscovered. I say rediscovered is because even the word discovered has this, well, we knew it was around, and it's being uncovered, discovered, back again. And so, welcome back to the show, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, now research means that you're searching for something you lost.
Yeah, research. It's amazing when you actually stop to think of these words. It's right in front of us.
Yeah, really. So now, again, we were talking about Bill Schul and Ed Pettit on their laser beam studies of scale models of the Great Pyramid. And so when that light beam reflected around and the indented pyramid, then it reflected right into the Queen's Chamber. And that then started a whole other line of thought for me. I was just dangerous enough with a program called AutoCAD. So I started working with AutoCAD figures with pyramids indented, but I found out that you had to do things in a really series type of manner. You just couldn't print it on the piece of paper. And so I started doing various types of things, and lo and behold, then I had a stack of papers that I put together through AutoCAD. And it was really interesting. I deal with wine and also juice and that type of thing, and it changed the taste of the liquid. So what the Chinese were doing with their magnetite and heat, what the volcanoes were doing with pressure, and then now what I was also doing with sound signals, here I was doing it simply by electromagnetic fields that were created by a stack of papers with the lines on them, creating basically a electromagnetic field. And so then I also noticed that if I took a dome and I put it on top of the papers, it actually concentrated it. It made it even more intense.
So let me stop there. So when you say stack of papers, you printed out reconstructed the pyramid. Let's say each paper would be a slice through the pyramid, and as you stack them up, it would recreate it?
Basically, essentially, yeah, because again, you could not just put them all on one piece of paper. It just simply doesn't work.
So even the arrangement of the ink on the paper caused this process.
Exactly. So basically, I reproduced what the Earth was doing with magnetite, and basically, if you really think about it, then that's basically as the magnetite was formed with the oxygen, it was making probably this very similar types of things, but instead of putting it on a piece of paper, it was on a piece of metal. Okay, so it's all about, again, the certain type of structure that you use. Then I took those same values, and it was like a serendipitous type of thing. Before, you only had signal generators for many years. About the same time that I came up with this discovery, there was then a new program came out. It was called Cool Edit Pro. And basically what you can do with that program is do the phase and do the amplitude and also the frequency. And I found a way of taking the values that I had found in AutoCAD and those geometric shapes and the angles, and I was able then to transfer it. You had to make some adjustments, but I made the adjustments so I could do it in Cool Edit Pro. So I set up my speakers and had my tones and everything, and put my wine and my juice in there. And lo and behold, wow, it changed it. So then one day I forgot to turn on the speakers, but there was still a signal coming down from the computer to the speaker. And I found out that what was really changing it was not the tone. It was actually the electromagnetic signal. So I totally got rid of the speakers, and I found out, just like when I got rid of the high voltage and I went to frequencies, it was actually better. Well, the same thing when I got rid of the speakers and went to electromagnetic signals, it actually improved. So now, if people want to go up on the Tri-Vortex website, you can see a picture of the chamber. There, I have 2 of them now in the world. One of them is in South Africa, and one is here in Florida. And on each side of the chamber, it's a big, huge tube. There are domes on each side. There's also graphics on each side. There is antennas on each side, and those antennas are connected to a computer, and it's putting out very specific types of and a whole wide range of electromagnetic pulses coming from the speaker. It goes through an amplifier to the antenna, and then is concentrated inside of the chamber. Anything that goes into this chamber for 24 hours and it comes out, then when you put a liquid or a solid near that treated item, what's then called sympathetic resonance occurs. The molecular structure of the liquid or the solid now is in coherency. It's in sympathetic resonance with that item. And I can do shoes, I can do watches, it doesn't matter. Any item that's put in there then has these structuring abilities. However, they did find out that the signals that are inside of the treatment chamber, they are best replicated with gold, silk, and lasers. It's almost like a duplicate. And because, again, those items already have a tremendous amount of structure. Silk is one of the most organized natural type of substances that you can get, and also gold is the same way. And of course, then lasers, that's what makes lasers work. They have structure. So it was, again, a really type of gradual type of process. The basic type of product for Tri-Vortex is a Tri-Vortex plate. It's 3 inches in diameter, and it has all the abilities of that, again, the magnetite and the volcanoes of Hawaii. In fact, it actually works even faster. With my old magnetite that I did with the sound signals, it took 7 to 9 minutes to structure the liquid. Now with this disc, it takes about 30 seconds to about 3 minutes. So it's really rapid and very fast. So any type of liquid that goes on top of there, you can do wine, juice, whatever. Now, what's the meaning of this? When you take a drink of something and it has a smoother, nicer taste going down than the other ones that has this rough edge type to it and has the afterbite, what does that mean? Our bodies have a certain type of molecular structure. One of the very first defenses that we have is that when the body has this hit, and I always call it the hit of this disorganization, that's telling us, hey, this is not organized. This is not the same organization as me. And when it goes down, then the whole purpose of the body, and now emphasis of the body, not purpose, but emphasis is to try to structure that solid or liquid food so assimilation and absorption and digestion can take place. The problem being, after the age of 30, most times we've lost that ability to structure. And especially in today's world where there's so much toxins and the poor diets and the stress and everything else like that. So by the age of 30, we've lost that ability. And I believe that is 99% of all diseases are because we're not hydrated properly at the cellular level. And that occurs is because we don't have the ability to structure. So what becomes a very emphasis then is that we need to have the structured water from the moment that it hits our tongue all the way down. And that's what, again, the Tri-Vortex allows to do, is any type of liquid that you set on top of there, also solid food also, it does the same thing, is that once it touches your tongue, it is now in the same molecular structure, which again, what's also really key about all my discoveries is that, and it was based upon what traditional science discovered, is that everything is a left-handed spin for all biological entities on Earth. So animals, plants, and humans all have a left spin or counterclockwise type of turn. And that's very key, is that you need to keep everything in a left-hand turn. So that's what the whole Tri-Vortex is all emphasized in, just absolutely taking that left turn to almost, I want to say, a hyper type of speed, and try to bring as much left spin quickly and as fastly, as fast as possible, so that structure of that liquid or solid is now in a really tight left-handed spin. And
now as we're talking here, we're looking at how a technology can emulate nature and accelerate it. So it's not like, well, what did people do, 1,000 years ago? They didn't have a Tri-Vortex or whatever. Well, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, they were drinking water, especially like you gave the example of these Hawaiian guys. They were drinking water from a naturally structured state. Even if you went out into the world and just drank from a pond, because of the lack of toxins, pollutions, the natural flow of water and so on, you were getting a somewhat structured device. Now, these guys from Hawaii had a superstructure or better structure, and of course they did better. And now we're talking about technology allowing us to create not only this structured water, a better quality structured water, but very simply.
Yes, exactly. So we don't have to have a rain cloud and a volcano.
Yeah. Now I'm looking at the picture of the Tri-Vortex unit, and I see the domes at the end. What is that large red cylinder next to it?
That's another shape. That's another Tri-Vortex chamber. That's experimental.
Okay. So what's going through there? I mean, we're looking at this and we see the tube and the two ends to it. I mean, what's happening in it?
Well, again, as I said, there's an antennas on both sides. It's a special type of shaped antenna, and that's connected then to an amplifier. The amplifier is then connected to the computer. And all these structure type of signals. One of the key things is that why there is a chamber in South Africa is that when I was first doing Tri-Vortex, and I was creating my chambers, doing my things, and people would take the Tri-Vortex plate, and now we have the disc, but then at one time there was a plate, and they would take it south of the equator. Once they got south of the equator, it stopped working. Then when they come north of the equator, it start working again, driving me crazy. So then I got a call from Anton Unger in Cape Town, and he said, well, why don't you try to build one here? And it was a big risk because, this is still some proprietary.
Right.
But I just went with my intuition and I trust, and I said, okay. So I instructed him on how to build one. Now, in the meantime, while he is building his chamber, I started messing around with my tones and said, oh, wait a minute, I think I know what my problem is. And I found the solution. And so now any product that's put into a Tri-Vortex chamber, it will work anywhere in the world. I found out what the problem was. And so, but then Anton went ahead and he has his own little product line of Tri-Vortex, but he also had a computer genius that he works with. And when we started doing these tones, is that to try to manually put them into Cool Edit Pro, or now what's called Adobe Audition, to manually put these tones in would take forever. You would have to have a crew of 50 people working 24/7 to work out the numbers that we were doing. So he went to a computer genius, and he found a way that what we could do is then extrapolate. We'd say, okay, here was where we want to start. Here's where we're going to go with the tone. And then we created what's called the Tri-Vortex audio tone program, per se. And we had TV1, and now we're all the way up to TV8. And it's a very sophisticated type of thing. There's only 2 of these programs in the world, operated by Anton and myself. And being able then to now create these electromagnetic fields, I don't even think the United States military has what we're doing. Basically, it's so sophisticated, but it's again on a subtle type of level. It's not on a real powerful type of level. It's more at the cellular level because we're using amplifiers, and we're not using really, big type of equipment type of thing. So it's all, again, on a smaller scale, but that's still, what do we work on? The humans are more on a smaller scale, same thing with plants. So again, the whole thing of subtle energy.
All right, let me say this. I'm going to try and make an analog here and see if there's any gravity to it. If you take a piece of iron, for example, the magnetic arrangement of it basically is going to be chaotic. Of course, if it does cool in a magnetized environment like the Earth, there's going to be some type of magnet to it. But, in essence, there's still going to be somewhat of a chaotic flow of it. So now if you take a strong magnet and walk back and forth on it in a particular pattern, you would then structure the magnetism to be consistent. You'd have a north and south pole to it, right? Is that a kind of an analog of what you're doing? Not magnetically per se, but you're using these tones in a particular sequence, particular tones, and arranging, if you will, the structure of the items you stick in there.
Yes, exactly. That's a good analogy. Yes, okay. That's very good. So
just like when you have a magnet and you pick up items with it, it doesn't wear out per se, because it's acting out its own influence, a passive yet active influence on an environment.
Again, I keep going back to that chemical element, or that's not a chemical element. It's actually a compound called magnetite. And the magnetite is also just in a very, very small portion in every blood cell. And actually every cell has magnetite in it, except for stem cells. But any type of cell has magnetite in it. Magnetite is not magnetic. That's the also thing too. Is remember those the woolly types of things where you had the face and you'd have the magnet and you'd move the things and create the things. Well, again, that substance that was in those like woolly, I think that was called, and you're trying to make those faces. The substance in there is magnetite, and so magnetite reacts to a magnetic field. So that's also very key there.
But it doesn't get magnetized itself.
No, it doesn't. It's not magnetic itself. It doesn't attract anything else to itself. But magnetite it's one of the most reactive compounds to a magnetic field.
Oh, well, so what about something like a what's that called? It's when they want to take a picture of your brain slices. They put it in the giant electromagnet.
Yeah, MRI.
MRI, there you go. Now, that sounds like that would be detrimental to you then, because you're doing these huge magnetic fields that are reversing left and right,
And you couldn't even get me close to an MRI. No way. I had those back in the 1990s when I was even doing my old multitrans, and knowing what I knew about magnetic fields and basically what they do in those MRIs, they literally scramble that's how they measure it. They scramble you up. And then that's how they measure it. And I asked the people back in the 90s, the salespersons, I said, well, how do you know that the molecular structure goes back to, the way it was? Oh, well, I just kind of mumbled and they didn't have any answer for it. And so, no, you could not even get me close to an MRI machine. Never. I will never come even close to those things.
All right. Well, all right. But you see, when you're talking about this stuff, how it clicks in my head. Well, let this be true, then that be true, and of course you're saying that, and that it makes it all logical, because I don't have the technical. I know a little but a lot, I guess, and so I understand what you're saying, but through analog, I think a lot of people who doesn't have the technological can see the cause and effects and the principles behind it, and then if you find the principle, as you go out and check other things, there should be consistency. It shouldn't be contradictory. So if you said, like, well, the MRI's it's okay, because, it would start to go like, wait a minute, that doesn't jive. But then I anticipated your answer saying it would be bad, and it was. So that means I understand, at least in an analog of the principle.
And it's also, too, is see the magnetite, again, it has, again, iron, and it also has the theoretical composition. I don't know if it's correct or not, but theoretically, according to traditional science, magnetite is iron, 3 parts iron and 4 parts oxygen. Now, one of the key things, though, is that on like this heat lamp, and it's also it occurs especially in the heat, not so much the pressure, and it didn't happen when I was doing signals, but these heat lamps. What happens when you constantly put heat on them? The oxygen molecule, that's what's actually making everything work. So these magnetite is giving off an oxygen molecule, and that's what's actually doing the structuring. But at a certain point, that oxygen molecule that's been now in a compound with the iron gives out. There's no longer any oxygen molecules there, and so the plate is basically then just a piece of iron. It's no longer a magnetite; it's iron. Hence, that you have to always change out those heads on those heat lamps. And that's where, again, the advantage of Tri-Vortex is it's a one type of thing. You buy it once. There's no changes. I still have products out there that are 10 years old and still working. So the magnetite products have somewhat of a problem built into them because, again, of the way the composition of the magnetite is, and the oxygen will deplete on them.
No, it's kind of interesting because what you're offering here in the solution form is about the nightmare from somebody who wants to sell a complex equipment or wants to have you come back for a recharge, or an element burns out, you need to replace it because this item works actively yet passively. And so, therefore, it being a true energy catalyst, you buy it once and you use it. It doesn't make good for resale.
Yeah, well, and that's where, again, for me, is that it's then basically on the numbers type of thing. So it's just introducing as many people to the plate as possible. And I am not going to, when I went into this, that's what my whole thing was. I went also going back even further. The reason why I got into the whole structuring had to do with a person by the name of Pat Flanagan. He was selling.
Oh, yeah, I've had him on, I think I've had him on my show.
Yeah, and so he was selling a thing called crystal energy, and it was drops. And so you, instead of.
Okay.
So you put these drops into distilled water and it structured the water. Well, it turns out that the chemical analysis and a spectral analysis of his product, in actuality, it's concentrated surfactant or soap. Now, he didn't say that. He wouldn't tell you that. The same thing that what he based it on was, I'm convinced, where Pat got his information was a guy by the name of Willard, and there was Willard's water. And Willard was a road engineer, and he found that when they were doing the asphalt, that they have to use a high surfactant to put it into the asphalt. Otherwise, it won't spread out. It would just ball up. And so by putting in these drops of this highly, highly concentrated soap, the asphalt would then could be easily spread out and conformed. And so what then Willard and then also Flanagan discovered is that you can just take just a little minute amount of this surfactant and also structure type of water. So, but the Willard's water was a little bit less expensive, but the crystal energy was very expensive. But it was basically in some ways kind of deceptive. I want to say is because they didn't really tell you what the true ingredients was, which was soap. But when I used it, I didn't know that at the time. I didn't find this out till several years later. But when I was using Willard water and I was also using this crystal energy, that was the motivation. I said, wait a minute, they're charging a lot of money for this. There has to be a way of structuring liquids in a non-chemical type of way. It's a one type of purchase. People then are empowered. So I went in from the viewpoint that I wanted to provide an empowerment to every individual to have a very simple device, such as the disc. I mean, it's so simple, very, very simple. But I had to go through, again, as I said, the multi-trans with electronics and that type of thing to get to it. But that was always the goal. And the goal was always to provide the most simplest product possible to the individual. And I was not looking at resale. I was not looking at making myself into a subtle energy mogul. And
right, but if you think about it, I mean, if you sold one to, say half the people on the planet, that would bring in some cash. So
but it brings about the awareness.
Yeah, but I always maintain, though, that if people do something and provide for the benefit of the world in an honest fashion, they'll be compensated. It's not like you have to twist arms.
We can talk about that on the other side.
Yeah. I got a couple other questions on this whole thing, so we'll take a break and come back and continue talking with Brian David Anderson. The webpage, tryvortex.com. If you buy a computer, you can be kind of clicking along and looking at his stuff while they're there. We'll have, of course, links to it for those who listen to the archives on the webpage. Many people download it via iTunes and whatnot, but we recommend going to the webpage for the archives for the additional material that'll be there. So hold on. We'll be back and continue right after this. All right, we are back again talking with Brian David Anderson about structuring, and actually we're getting a whole, and I like this too. It's one thing when someone comes by and says, "Here, try this, it works." It's another thing when someone will explain the principle behind it, and Brian is explaining it in spades, so to speak, about the idea of structured water, how to structure water, what are the best ways to structure water, and that indeed it's the structure of the water which makes all the difference. And welcome back, Brian. Now, I want to ask you, we're all assuming now the water's pure as well. I mean, that's kind of an assumption that maybe we should go into, because if you have a filtering unit or some type of a gizmo that cleans the water and has, say, aluminum tubing, for example, or the filter is not changed properly or what have you, like reverse osmosis seems to be the great thing, but it does get contaminated. So maybe we can go a little bit about the pure water need to be used.
Yeah. Again, the most, when we say pure, what we're saying is that the only thing that is in the molecule is oxygen and hydrogen, and that is it, nothing else. So the purity means just those two chemical elements. Anything else is then considered a contaminant. That's what distilled water is when it comes from the sky or from a device. It is basically hydrogen, oxygen, and that is all. And again, this goes back to then the phosphorus sheath that is around every human, plant, and animal cell. This phosphorus sheath was discovered back in the late 1990s. And it's my contention then that the only thing that goes through to the cell because of the phosphorus sheath are light particles, nothing else. And that's why it's important then to penetrate this phosphorus sheath. The only two chemical elements that needs to be in water are hydrogen and oxygen. If there are other chemical elements, contaminants, then it will not pass through the phosphorus sheath. So, and basically the only water that really makes the per se grade is distilled water. Your reverse osmosis has some type still of contaminant in it. The problem being also with reverse osmosis is that you never know when the purity rates start to really plummet. Again, the contamination actually starts to go up. Unless you have a meter right there with the reverse osmosis or filters or whatever it might be, you never know when that contamination starts to then creep back into the water. And if the lake turns over or your water source has problems and it comes through your pipes and there's a lot more contamination than there was a week before, well, that's going to wear out your filters, your reverse osmosis. And again, as I said, you do not know when contamination rates rise and the purity states then start to fall off. That's why I like it again with distilled water. You always know what you're getting. You always know you're getting just a hydrogen, oxygen molecule, and that's it.
Now, actually, I want to go on from there, but I want to touch back what we were talking about before about the structuring, different ideas about structuring. So even though there are other items out there that can structure, it is your research that brought you to Trivortex. So if someone has a gizmo that structures water, they're not necessarily lying, and it may structure the water, but there may be other aspects of it, meaning a cost or recharging or whatnot. Like you mentioned the soap item. It did structure the water, but it is a bit of a contaminant itself, plus you have to keep on buying the product. So this is kind of where you led yourself to what you have.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, because it's easy. Somebody else might say, well, it's because he made it, he's trying to sell it, you know. But what you're coming out with is a finished product of your research going through these items to come out with a self-contained unit that will last for a long time, perhaps ever, that somebody could buy and use and make, you know, gallons and thousands of gallons of water and all this stuff, and wine and food and juice and all this, and not have to worry about something breaking on it.
Yes, exactly. And also the disc has multiple purposes. You can put it on your wash machine and reduce your clothes soap. Again, you do experimentation. You can bring it almost down to 1/3 of, if you were putting in 1 cup, you can put it down to 1/3 cup and get just as much cleaning, because what does the soap do? It structures the water. So by simply putting it on the wash machine, the energies go through the metal, and as the water is pouring in, it's being structured. So you don't have to put as much soap in. You can also take that disc and throw it into a bathtub, put a little bit of salt in with it, Epsom salt, any kind of salt. And what happens then is the salt becomes an extension of the disc. So when you soak in the water, it's like water is just nothing but huge tri-vortex field. And again, I'm 59 years old. I play full court basketball with 20-year-olds. When I come home after playing 5 or 6 games of full court, I hop in the bathtub, and even still being the inventor, I'm still, every time I'm just sort of shocked or, you know, impressed that when I get out of the bathtub, I have very little soreness, and many times I can go back and just basically play the next day, and as if I didn't even play the day before. So, again, it has not only just for your drinking purposes, but it's also for other purposes. Also, remember now is that we're talking about molecular chaos in water. That means we're also water. Our liquids in our body, we're 90% water. And so when we go chaos in our various liquid states, that is the basis of fatigue. It's also the basis of pain. So it's also the disc is also has a multiple purpose also for pain. For example, my mother, a friend, she had a part of her uterus actually dropped, and she's in her 80s. So they went in and they did a surgery where they went and tied it back up to her back, and they gave her the highest prescription of Vicodin that there is possible. The only thing they were even thinking about doing, you know, some sort of high Demerol and that type of thing. But she did not fill her prescription. She had already had experiences with the tri-vortex, and just simply put the plate back in the area where they had attached it. And basically from the moment, when I say moment, probably 2 or 3 minutes after she applied it, until 3 or 4 days later, when the doctors cleared her, she had almost virtually no pain whatsoever. So, and there's many stories about that, of a lot of people having knee problems, back problems, head problems, hip problems.
Well, you know, I could not to interrupt you, but I personally have your unit, the credit card type unit, and I had my knee went out. It was very terrible, and I literally wrapped it up my knee in an ace bandage, and I stuck it in the bandage, and I kept it there for several days. You know, every time I changed the bandage out or, you know, whatever, I would put it on. And, you know, my knee's fine. So, but the thing is, when you say this to people, they can say, well, how do you know your knee would have been fine without it? You know, it's like, well, you know, I don't know, okay? But it just seemed to me that I went from, hey, my knee's out, do I need surgery, to, if my knee's fine, you know, I'll take it. And I have other uses of that, which kind of confirm that as I use it, headache, whatnot. Sure, would the headache go away by itself? You know, I can't prove it. It's, you know, when you do these things, you can't really. You'd have to have 2 people exactly the same, exact same imagery, put them together, and try it. And even that, you know, you'd have to make sure they eat the same and everything the same. You know, it's kind of hard to have a A/B comparison in an absolute sense. But look at when you take drugs, what they do. Well, you know, there's these side effects. Some people have this, some people have that, some people do this, some people do that, and yet the drug is touted as being a good thing. And yet it doesn't work for some, it doesn't work for others. You know, well, so somehow they accept that. But when people use this stuff, like you're saying, you have these testimonies. Somehow, some people, well, I don't really know if that's true or not. You know.
Well, and again, what is a good kind of standard on that is I've been doing this a lot with athletes over the years, and they know what a twisted ankle is like. They know what a twisted thing is. They know their injuries, and many times then they'll have that repeat injury, especially ankles. And so basically they'll know, okay, at this type of twist, then I'm going to have this type of recovery. And I've had numerous athletes that have also used just like you on a twisted joint, and they're just amazed of how quickly they come back, much faster than if they didn't use the unit.
And I wasn't, actually at that time, I think about it, I was not doing the water process. So this was, I got it and I tried it out on the water. I did this stuff, but I didn't do it religiously. And at that time, now I think about it, I just stuck it on my knee and I wasn't treating the water with it. So just imagine what I would have done if I would have done both.
Yeah, and that's exactly, again, proper water hydration with any type of condition. Again, when you're using the disc on a pain area, but also at the same time getting the proper hydration is also really key to rapid recovery. There's also, when you were bringing up about drugs having contraindications, the only contraindication that we've found so far over the now going on 25 years of all this research on this subtle energy is that when a person has a lot of toxins in their body, once the Tri-Vortex is introduced, whether it be the water or the plate or whatever, the body will go through a period of detox. And in actuality, the person may then experience a actually increase in the fatigue, possibly even the pain. And this could, most times it only lasts maybe 2 or 3 days, and sometimes even hours versus all the way up to 3 days. So people call me and say, well, I'm actually feeling worse. And I said, well, what's happening here is a detox. Just give it time. I said, within, 5-10 days, something like that, then you're going to find yourself on the other side of this. And lo and behold, I have never had anybody call back up and say, hey, I'm still feeling bad. They generally, but then a lot of people, it depends upon how much toxins you have in your body and what type of reaction you're going to have. So it just varies. But that's been the only contraindication. And that's not really a contraindication. That's actually it's a good thing that you're having this detox type of period and getting out the toxins and poisons of the body. But as that's happening, people just have to realize that that little period can be a hiccup. But once you're on the other side of it, especially when you're doing the combination of both proper hydration and also the Tri-Vortex products, then recovery and energy levels can really reach a maximum type of level.
Right, and I think that's the important part when people do this. If you were taking medicine, for example, and you took it sporadically, and you say, hey, it's not working well or whatever, well, you have to take one a day or what have you. When you do these other aspects, you have to have a continual flow through. And I was just telling Brian prior to recording this that I've been doing this process. Actually, we should probably go into that in a little bit. Having this water, and yesterday I didn't do it. I drank other water, juice, whatever, without this process. And I felt lousy when I woke up. No, I don't know. Maybe I just had a bad day, but what popped in my head, which I've been listening to a lot lately, is this inner dialogue, inner voice that said, you didn't drink any of that water. And so, just as we were talking, I opened up one of my stainless steel little containers, and I just drank it. And you just can't stop drinking it. It's like I continue until it's gone.
Yeah, and that's where, again, is that when you start to do this regimen of the distilled water, or, even if you're going to do your own water and changed by the Tri-Vortex, then when you're away from that for a period of time, there can be a tendency then your body will immediately react to those toxins coming in. That's probably what happened to you yesterday, is any type of toxins that were in those juices. It was bottled water. That means there was some, BPH, there was some formaldehyde, there were some other type of things that your body reacted to.
Yeah, that's a good point. So actually, maybe we should talk about this process. that I talked to you one day, and I do have a Berkey system, and you came up with a method that you use, which I have emulated, that you normally do for your drinking water or cooking water or what have you.
Well, basically what my process is that I have in my house is I have 3 stainless steel containers. 2 of them were pots that came from beer distillation that you can go up on, where you can actually make your own beer and alcoholic beverages, and they sell these stainless steel containers. So I bought 2 of those, and then I bought one Berkey filter, or one large Berkey unit, the largest one that Berkey sells in stainless steel. So what I do then is I then put faucets on them, but rather than putting my discs on, I went ahead and changed my faucets because I am the inventor of Vortex. I went ahead and put my faucets into there. And so I had to drill, especially for the Berkey filter, I had to do a little bit more of a drilling. And so then I fill up all 3 of those stainless steel containers that I buy distilled water I buy mine at Target. I find out that they have the best prices, and whoever in your area, it could be Walmart, it could be other places, but I found the best one that I can do is Target.
So this is the regular milk jug kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So basically, and that's what you're needing to do now is you don't want to drink that water directly out. You don't want to change the water with the Vortex disc while it's in that jug, is because then the formaldehyde gets in it real basically in the structure and that type of thing. So I don't do any type of changing of it until I then pour it into these stainless steel containers, and that's all I do. Now, you've done your thing of filtering through the Berkey filter. I don't see that harming. Basically, I don't not do that. But if you want to do that, that's an extra step that you can take, is put it in through the Berkey filter. It's going to make it even a pure water. If there's any type of contaminant in it, it's going to be basically gone because it's already distilled water and going through the filter. But now then...
but what I was worried about was the plastic that may leach in from the container.
Right, exactly. So that's where, again, is that it's going to clear anything out. So, sending it through a Berkey filter or some sort of filter. Then now you have all three of my jugs are full. And all of them, though, have little things at the top. Now, whatever units you guys, the listener might come up with, the main thing is you just leave a little bit open over the next 24 hours, is that you allow all those gases that were in that plastic container, they degas out over the next 24 hours. So then you have your plate underneath. You don't have to have it all the time. Once you pour the liquid in, you can now put it on for 3 minutes. That's good enough for the water. The water is structured now. It's good. So your plate can go off and do something else. But if you put it underneath there, that will work also too. So either way, it's going to work. So then that allows it 24 hours to degas. Then I start drinking from those 3. So I have my first one and I empty it. And so I'm going on to my second one. Well, I'll come back now and I'll fill that one that was just empty. So now I've got I got 3 of them that I filled. And each time that one empties, I'm now filling that one back up and letting it go through its 24-hour process. That way I always have water available. By doing this in the sets of 3, I've always have something available. And there's I'm either drinking from one jug, and in the next jug it's degassing. And just keep that process up all the way through constantly. And then roughly, you're creating a lot of waste, but then again, I have the recycling. All that jugs of distilled water can be recycled.
Yeah, that's one thing about I understand that the clear plastic jugs, the real clear ones, have trouble recycling rather than the milk containers. So
it's better off with that, especially when you're using any type of polycarbonate. You want to try to stay away from that because they can't recycle. But again, if you have a distiller, then the same thing is just put the plate anywhere on your distiller, and it also works there too. So what I've just found for myself is that the distillers, the cleaning of the distillers is very, very difficult. I have not found a distiller yet that doesn't have a difficulty in cleaning. That's the real Achilles heel of distillers. There's a couple of things that I've come across that possibility has potentials. I have designed my own distiller now also that I'm trying to do. It's going to be a low temperature distiller, and I believe I have that on the website. If not, I'll need to put that up there. But hopefully in the next year, I'll be coming out with a Vortex distiller and be very, very, again, working on very, very simple type of principles and easy to clean. And because that's what I really want to do is to try to emphasize, to try to make the cleaning as easy as possible. But right now, it is not that way for most distillers. That's why I go to actually doing the jug method rather than doing the distiller.
Yeah. Excuse me. Plus, at some point, there's a cost effectiveness that sometimes you do want to consume rather than do it all the way. And when you talk about all the labor involved and whatnot, it might be a problem. But what about, what's that called? I'm not trying to have a wrestling match here between various items, but there's a thing I read from somebody in an email said about an ozonator. I mean, what about the idea of ozonating or whatnot? Do you know that product or that process?
Yeah, putting negative ions, that's basically what it is. What you have to watch out for, though, is you don't want it to have an actual ozone generator. You want to have a negative ion generator. There's two different things. And so that, again, would help structure type of thing. But also, again, co-doing with that, I will also do it with a disc. It's going to help. It's not going to do anywhere near the structure of what Vortex will do. I've done experimentations with ionizers. And, in fact, I have,
that's why I want to ask you is because you've arrived at this conclusion as the best way to do it, and you've tested these things. So I'm kind of I realize that you offer this product, but from talking with you, I realize that you have this product as a result of trying to get to the best way to get to this end structured result. And so you can talk about these other items, not in like a fighting match for marketing, but in an experience from dealing with these issues.
Yeah, 22 years of experience of starting off with the old drops from Willard's Water and Crystal Energy all the way through electronic devices. That I went through that phase of electronics, and then now just strictly what is called subtle energy. And so 22 years of dealing with, and then, people calling me up and I then investigating what they follow up to the suggestions of hey, I found this, that, and I go look it up. And everything I've found so far, there is not any product that I've seen so far and that I've experienced that structures the water in the most simplest and the most dynamic manner and the most intense manner as Vortex.
How much, if you have one of these discs, what is the maximum volume that you could structure? I mean, could you stick it on a water tower for a municipality? I mean, is there some kind of limit?
Municipality probably be a bit much, but there are individuals, especially out of California. There was a guy that had a pool service, and he bought a bunch of discs from me. And so what he did is he put at that time it was the old plates, and he put it into the strainer of the hair strainer for the swimming pools. Mm-hmm. And he was able to reduce his chemicals by 1/3. So he was still providing the service to the individuals. They were having great results, even with the pool under stress. Then it was holding up, and he was saving money because of using the plate, and he was able then to reduce his chemical costs. And these pools ranged anywhere from 5,000 all the way up to 15,000 gallons.
Okay, well, actually, that reminded me of another couple questions, so let me I wrote it down here, and let's go to the break for a minute and come back. We're talking with Brian David Anderson about structured water and, the various methods of structuring, what is structuring, why structure, and so on. We've covered a lot of that already. We have another segment left to go to continue along this process. TryVortex.com is his website with his products. In there, of course, you can also find the whole research behind it, the whole principles on it, and a pamphlet on the problems with the distilled water and the need for structuring. So hold on, we will come back after this break. All right, we are back with the final segment. Brian David Anderson, TryVortex.com. We're talking about water structured water in particular, why you use structure, what does structuring do, what does non-structured water do. And this all started from a listener who wrote in with an article about the problem with distilled water, hearing me talk about how I use distilled water. But there's a whole process that goes with the distilled water, and it has to do with structuring. Yes, drinking distilled water does cause troubles, but the structured distilled water is the greatest way to do that. And welcome back, Brian. On that subject, it mentioned that distilled water takes out the minerals and all that. And what you're saying is that leaching process is due to the body structuring the water.
And again, we can demonstrate this with flowers. It's the demonstration's up on the website. The individual can also do their own testing once they get a Tri-Vortex product. And the simple test is to take distilled water. You can take it right out of the jug. You don't even have to degas it or whatever. And take 2 flowers, put 1 flower into the changed distilled water and put 1 into the unchanged, and make sure they're not in the same part of the room. They can be across, but they're in the same type of atmospheric conditions per se. And then just watch them, what happens. And normally what happens then is that the unstructured distilled water basically kills the flower off, and it wilts within 2 or 3 days, sometimes even earlier. The distilled water that's been changed, that flower will get large, huge, big, and a massive bloom. Now, what we've also done over the years is do testings then, and why I can always say then the statement of that distilled water is either the very worst or it's the very best. We've also done waters in between there, from RO water to bottled water, all different types of things, both changed and unchanged by the Tri-Vortex. And there still has never been any water that's ever exceeded distilled water that has been changed by the Tri-Vortex. At the same time, the Tri-Vortex, or the distilled water that's not been structured, it's the very worst. So it always kills off the flower the earliest period of time. Then you have tap water, you have RO water, you have filtered water, you have bottled water. All those waters now are in between both the structured and unstructured distilled water. So, and those simple type of tests can be repeated by anyone. There's been numerous now persons that become Tri-Vortex distributors, and that was one of the first tests they did. And when they were satisfied with it, they became distributors. And again, you go up on the Tri-Vortex website, and you can go under the section of research, and you can also find, beyond just flower tests, there are other tests. There have been numerous agricultural tests done on crops, on potted plants, all different types of things, where we show photographically and how the difference is between structured and unstructured water. And that could be also, it could be again just ordinary hose water, it can be distilled water, that all has basically the same results of showing the far superiority and organized in structure and the huge blooms, but are also chlorophyll rates, that type of thing. And it's all up on the research page of Tri-Vortex.
Yeah, actually, I was looking at it. In fact, that's the next area I was going to go into, so that's good about the plants and flowers and whatnot. And you also show a picture of bread, for example, and the untreated bread molded extremely faster, much worse. And how does the structured water work against disease or against mold or something like that? I mean, what's the difference? If you know why these, we'll call them negative things like mold and all that. Why can't they thrive in a structured water environment?
Well, again, because the mold is the result of molecular chaos. And the same thing with disease, same thing with pain and fatigue. It all has to come down to what's the structure of your molecules. And as soon as they go into chaos, you get mold, you get pain, you get disease, you get fatigue. It all goes down. And once you start to bring structure in, then you have the integrity of that molecule, is maintaining its original structure, whether it be bread or it be an orange or pickle juice or the red cells of your body or whatever. They all maintain a higher integrity and higher molecular structure, hence high energy and no pain, no disease.
I guess the search for the fountain of youth was not that far off. It has to do with water, but structured water may actually be the fountain of youth. You can't live forever, but you can live a healthier life.
Yeah, and that's where, again, there's a whole other area called telomeres. Telomeres are the DNA structure, and they have found out that when the two strands of DNA start to separate, they've noticed that they find that more in disease states. And then as the telomeres start to come back together, that's more healthier states. And there's one particular company called SpectraCell that is doing these tests, and hopefully now we're going to be initiating some new tests here where we can literally prove then by taking blood tests over a year period of showing these telomeres. And when I had a talk with the technician, or actually the director of this telomere program, I said, well, this seems like to me it would be one of the best ways to prove hydration. And he said, yeah, you're most likely right, is that there is a correlation is as these telomeres start to separate, it also has to do with the person's hydration level. So, and basically, again, it would be, if we could take a sample of 2 days ago on your telomeres, and then when you went back and you did all got away from the water and got to the juices and the bottled water, what happened to your telomeres? Did they start to separate again? So there's also going to be hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, we have some very exciting ways of also now scientifically proving the whole value of hydration and proper nutrition.
There's perhaps a metaphysical aspect one can go in here, is that by having a body that is hydrated with structured water might even become a better receptor for subtle energies that may come from a metaphysical source, that we would actually tune in and absorb life-giving chi or prana, or however one would say it, because we are, our antennas, our water antennas, if you will, are tuned in better.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then just the reverse is that as your body is full of toxins, you're having, regretfully, you're receiving a different vibration. I'm not going to try to put a value judgment on it saying that one is better than the other, but a body that is structured and has all of its telomeres and has all of its cells and has that phosphorus sheath humming and moving good, then that body is going to receive a different type of signal and then function on a different type of signal per se than a body that is in total chaos due to emotions and also poor diet and poor no hydration. And so but the one that's at the higher vibration is probably going to be less problematic, and the one that is at the different vibration, I want to say lower, higher, is at that different vibration of chaos, is probably going to have a lot of problems.
As I go along this line, I think of people like Jesus who had an effect on people just by being there near them and by healing, and other people have throughout time have done this. It's very possible that it, again, has to do with the structured water of their body tuning into the higher sources and becoming a better radiator of this energy, a repeater, if you will, of this energy.
Well, as again, also, they always talk about the story, the fable of the turning water into wine. And the question being is, was it really wine that was injected, or was somehow there was an alchemical type of way of introducing alcohol into the water? And so when they say water to wine, well, the people were then had intoxication. And did the intoxication come from actually being wine or grapes, or was it the water had somehow been introduced to a alcohol, and they were then getting the buzz and getting the intoxication, no different from the wine? So that's another thing we don't know.
Right. I myself am a fan of the alchemizing of water to wine by simply rearranging the basic energy pattern to be a pattern of wine from a pattern of water. And then, and again, I understand we're getting into kind of esoteric areas there, but for all we really know, the changing, what you could measure and you could show, this structuring process, as we would call it in a physical realm, could have far-reaching situations. I know just for myself, I'm not the distributor of the product. I'm a user of it, but the difference is amazing. And when I don't use it, I notice it more than when I didn't use it and then use it. There's this, right. Once you've tried it, you go, wait a minute. And again, it's not something that we have to keep coming back to to get our fix. This is a project that keeps on keeping on.
Right, exactly. And that's the way that I designed it. That was the intent, total intent to give self-empowerment to the individual.
Now, we do have a little time here left, and I thought I'd wanted to go a little bit on the application of the Tri-Vortex into other items that you have. Like, for example, if you were to wear the amulet, that would be something on you all the time, constantly arranging your molecule. How would you say that? Not arrange the structure. I mean, but you're talking about the idea that the photons are actually what is exchanged, and that when you have chemistry, for example, you take a chemical, there's a photon exchange with the cell by using this particular chemical. The chemical itself doesn't necessarily go into the cell, but it has a photon exchange. And so therefore, if you're wearing this amulet, you would then have this continual dialogue, if you will, with a structured source and an ever-changing body.
Again, the history, which I think you're talking about, is the Tri-Vibes. And the history of that is that, again, I'm 59. I play full-court basketball with 20-year-olds, but now it was about 6-7 years ago that I started having some problems with my left knee. I took a dagger board actually my right knee. I took a dagger board to it by a catamaran 20 years earlier, and most likely I was having a leakage of what is called high hyaluronic acid, and that's the structure that goes between the bone and the cartilage. And so as an experiment, I took a tablet of hyaluronic acid and I put it against my knee where I was having problems. Now, hyaluronic acid, when you take it orally, basically it's destroyed. The digestive system destroys 95%. You get very little of the hyaluronic acid when you're taking it orally. So as I put it then on my knee, nothing occurred. I took that same tablet, put it into the Tri-Vortex chamber, left it there for 24 hours, brought it back out. I still had that same intense type of sharp knee pain, put it on that area, and within 2 or 3 minutes, the knee pain had been reduced by 70%. And so what happened then is that I probably for the very first time, I was pioneering, but I had then the experience of light particle assimilation. Basically, the light particles of the hyaluronic acid were excited by the Tri-Vortex process, and then when put into near to that area that it needed the hyaluronic acid, then the light particles went right through the phosphorus sheaths and into the cell, and hence then, per se, the uptake of the nutrients then took place. Then that said, well, okay, if I can do that, well, what if I put other nutrients inside? I started doing that, and I started selling the product as Tri-Vibes, and a distributor of mine had cancer, and but she was in remission. She then took a SpectraCell test, and what they do is they then take blood and they can culture the blood and they can find out what type of nutrients in the body or not. It used to be controversial, but is no longer a type of test. It's called SpectraCell. And so the doctor did the SpectraCell test, and when the test results came back, the SpectraCell contacted the doctor and said, bring your patient in, she's overdosing. When we see levels like this, it's an overdose. She's probably taking, 2 or 3 doses a day. So my distributor goes into the doctor and now concerned and said, the doctor said, you got to stop doing this. And she looked at the doctor and said, Doctor, I've never taken a vitamin or nutrient ever in my life, but I've been wearing these Tri-Vibes. So the uptake was, again, what this also it confirmed a belief by a lot of nutritionists that when a body is in stress, that it will take up more nutrients than it will in a non-stress type of way. So that's, again, she was in this cancer remission, was under stress, hence the body was pulling in. They gave her, then did some liver and kidney and bladder tests to make sure there was no toxic levels, and she was totally clear. There was no toxic levels of any vitamins or nutrients in those organs. And so basically it was then the source of that. So then there was a 50-year-old woman. She did a same type of thing, a similar type of test, but what we did is she did not take any vitamins or nutrients for 40 days, and she was on a normal type of diet, chicken fried steak. There was nothing spectacular about her diet. And then we did the test, and the test results came back, and what it showed is she was not deficient. She was not deficient at any of her vitamin levels whatsoever. She was in a sufficient state. There's only 1% of all the persons that have ever done this test that are totally sufficient in all vitamins and nutrients. And those persons are taking very high levels of nutrients. So then I presented both these tests to a person by the name of Brian Clement. He runs the Hippocrates Health Institute out of West Palm Beach, Florida here. When he saw those tests, he was commenting that all of the patients that come into Hippocrates, there's cancer patients, there's diabetic patients, there's all different type of people. And there's only been one person who had the same type of test results as this other lady. So it was very impressive for him. And so we did another test on one of his employees and basically got the same results. Those 3 tests then resulted in my being hired as a consultant scientist for Hippocrates, and I just started this job in January. So it is somewhat of a coup because I have no college degree. I've been doing this now for 22 years, and my business card is somewhat like my diploma right now of all these 22 years of research, because it says Brian Anderson, consultant scientist, and then it says subtle energy and electromagnetic research and applications. So it's somewhat of a satisfactory type of level. Here I'm hired per se as scientist, and we're now conducting all these new type of tests, and it's been a real blast to really come in and help people on their subtle energy type of ways. For example, this Hippocrates has one of these heat lamps that I was talking about, the Chi lamps. But when the distributor or whoever was the vendor sold it to them, didn't tell them they had to change the heads. So they've had these lamps now for 2 or 3 years, never changed the heads, and they did not realize that basically all they have right now are pieces of iron. Mm-hmm. So again, there's just coming in more of all this experience of bringing forward that, again, they have 2 medical doctors on the staff, they have RNs, but none of them have anywhere near the experience that I have in subtle energy. So I'm assisting them and kind of filling them in. Luckily, I have a great medical staff that I work with, and they're all very open-minded. These are, avant-garde type of medical staff, and so I'm very fortunate in that area.
So actually, back to your the necklace, Tri-Vibe, is that you take the minerals and vitamins and you shine the process through them and encode the reaction that the vitamins would have had, the photon reaction, into the...
No, there's actual vitamins and nutrients in the Tri-Vibes itself.
Oh, inside it. And it...
Yes, there's actually...
and they've been treated.
Hollow. Yeah, and they've been treated and put into the stainless steel. And then what happens is it gets into the electromagnetic fields of the body and carries it all around. So what's happening... Now, it takes the nutrients about 20 or 30 days to build up in your body. It's not an instant type of thing. And so building up in the body, it takes about 20, 30 days. And now you have all this bioavailable nutrients, and you only take up what you need. You don't, if you don't need it, you don't take it up. And that's where, again, it's the advantage over orally taking vitamins and nutrients, because you don't know how much is absorbed. And then once all the unabsorbed material, how do you get it out? You always have to have a very high hydration level to get those oral materials, out of your body.
Now, this could be the next phase, if you will, for how we can exist on low food. Some have said that we're already going through an energy shift where that's why there's a lot of obesity, is people are eating way more than they need to have energy-wise, but now nutrition and energy aren't two things. So if we are starting to take in energy into our bodies, we have to have the bodies hydrated properly and tuned properly to get the aspects. And now with this Tri-Vibe, not only do you get these vitamins that have been processed, so they send off these photon issues, but the container itself, wouldn't that be kind of like a mini Tri-Vortex that you have as well? Yes,
it is. So it's a Tri-Vortex container. Everything goes into the chamber, the container for the Tri-Vibes, and also the vitamins and nutrients. But then also I had a hypothesis, well, would a laser actually put the nutrients in faster? So I bought what's called a little theater laser, and I put a pouch of Tri-Vibes. I did not put the laser into the Tri-Vortex chamber. All I did is I put a pouch of treated vitamins and nutrients up adjacent to the laser generator. And what's this theater laser? It's a laser, but it has a scattering type of lens. So you hold it 2-3 feet away from the body, and it just literally covers most of the body. And it's a laser beam, though. It's not one of these LEDs. And I noticed then that all the phenomenon of changing taste, that type of thing, all occurred by the laser beam itself. The laser was becoming a carrier for the Tri-Vortex. Now, the question being, was it also being a carrier for the nutrients? So that evolved then into a iodine test using it was a urine iodine test. That's up on the website, and it has the results of that. And basically what I proved by this clinical trial, I won't go into all the details about it, but what the clinical trial proved is that the laser then injected the nutrients almost immediately into the body.
Well, one other thing, as I'm looking at these rings, I mean, are these rings basically a Tri-Vortex? Or
yes.
Is there some, okay, so
yes,
you can wear your Tri-Vortex as a ring. Well, I appreciate the time and all your information. I'm fascinated by it. To me, it rings true both in my little inside meter as well as the logic behind it. Excuse me. And with the before and after trials of it, simple placebo wouldn't explain it.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. Well, see, that's the issue originally we was talking here was the distilled water itself has some issues that cause trouble, but by treating it with structure, it is, and then the Tri-Vortex system would be the culmination of your search for this treatment. So, all right, well, I appreciate it. That's TriVortex.com. David Brian Anderson, thank you very much, and we will talk again.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.